In the previous video, I finished by briefly explaining how the rand and the randbetween function in Excel work. Okay, so now what I want to do is just go in Excel and just do it, right? Let's just look at how these functions work so you can have a pretty good idea of how they work. And our goal here, I don't think I said that previously in the video, but our goal is to do a Monte Carlo simulation eventually. And so we need to generate random numbers. And we will need the function rand or the function randbetween to generate those random numbers. We could use other functions too. We don't have to generate from these, but that's what we're going to use. That's what I'm going to show you to use. Um, so yeah, that's what I'm showing you. The first thing here is I'm going to start, and I want to do a lot of different replications. So I'm going to type replications here, and I'm going to put one here. Then I'm going to go to Home, and I'm going to select Fill Series. I want to fill all the columns with step value of 1. And let's say we want 100 replications, so I want it to stop at 100. So it's just going to create numbers from 1 all the way to 100 in this column here. Okay. Now we want to draw a random number, and let's say we just want to use the rand function. So I just type equal, because we're in map mode, we want to do math, and rand, open and close parentheses. What I told you in the previous video is this will generate a random number, right? That is a random variable that is drawn from a uniform distribution with a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 1. So it just drew a random number between 0 and 1. And you can see that this is a pretty random number. Now, every time I type something and I do enter in Excel, it will recalculate this number. So this number will change, okay? And now let's just drag and get 100 replication of this number, right? So you can see here, I just have a number between 0 and 1 that was generated. This is close. This is really close to 1. Interesting. You rarely get numbers really, really close to 1 like this, right? The probability is relatively low. So, but that's it. I just have all of these numbers that have been randomly generated, and another one that's close to 1 here. And I have 100 of those, and they're all different. And if I go back to the top, and again, I type anything somewhere, and I press enter, it's going to recalculate everything. Another way I can recalculate everything is to go, and I don't always know this one by heart, go to Formula, and then just hit Calculate Now. Okay, and it's going to recalculate all of the numbers. Now, by the way, when you're working with this, and if you're not really used to using Excel and you're more confident with your financial calculator, you might want the number to not change all the time whenever you do something, right? And that way you can maybe like generate some random numbers, calculate stuff on your calculator, and verify that it works with what you did on Excel. What you can do is go to calculation option and put it to manual, okay? And if you put it to manual, make sure that format stale value is not clicked. Otherwise, it's going to kind of put a straight bar through your numbers. Let's just do it. Let's click on it. And let's say I go this and I do a replication. It's telling me all these numbers are not good. They haven't been recalculated. So I don't like having it on. I just remove that. And then if I do something and I hit enter, or if I hit calculate now, it's not, oh wait, I hit calculate now, so it recalculated everything, but it's not going to put that line, okay? And if you put, whoops, if you put manual here, the only time it will recalculate your random numbers is when you go here and you hit calculate now yourself. And that's the only time now it will recalculate all these random numbers, okay? We can also use the randbetween function. It's the other function I told you about. Let's say we want a number between 0 and 100, okay? We can do this, randbetween, and then we can just, oops, this is useful, actually, that it happened. Because I have only the calculation at manual, when I drag this down, it didn't select different random numbers. It just selected the same random number I have here. If I wanted to recalculate the random numbers, I have to use calculate now. Now they're all different. And you can see that they are all numbers between 0 and 100. The problem with this function, as I said, is that it only returns integers, which will not always like, will not always want. There's a way to play around that, right? Suppose we wanted a random number between 0 and 100. We could pick a random number between 1 and 1000 and divide by 100, and then we would at least get 2 decimals. Okay, so there's ways to go around it. But yeah, this is why I don't tend to like this function as much, because it doesn't pick completely uniformly. It has to be integers. Okay, and yeah, that's these two functions. The other thing we can do, and this is where this becomes interesting, we can use this function here, rand, open parenthesis, close parenthesis. We can use this function to actually draw from a normal distribution, because you need to realize that this is actually just a probability, right? A probability is a number between 0 and 1, right? So if, for example, I wanted to draw from a normal distribution, I could go here and I could do, we don't have to do it in different cells. You'll see in the future videos when I do Monte Carlo simulation, I do not do it in different cells. I do it all in the same cell. But here, just to showcase, right, I could say, okay, like, look, I want to draw from a normal distribution. So I'll go to normal.inv, okay? In order to draw from the normal distribution, I need to tell Excel, look, I want to draw from a normal distribution, and I want this to be the probability that the observations falls below that value. So we can just use this as our probability. That was a number that is randomly generated, right? So the number that I input in here is randomly generated, okay? And I want to draw from a random distribution with a mean of 30 and a standard deviation of 12, okay? And if I do this, this will draw a number, right, from our normal distribution with a mean of 30 and a standard deviation of 12. And I can just draw this multiple different time. And then again, because I change my calculate option to manual, will only recalculate the numbers when I use calculate now. But now this number changed, and it's calculating the, I drew a variable from a normal distribution that has 20% of observation below it. I drew from a normal distribution that has 92% of observation below it. And all these normal distribution are a normal distribution with a mean of 30 and a standard deviation of 12. So we can use this to draw random numbers. And this will be central to when we do Monte Carlo simulation. So hopefully this was clear, but I'll just introduce Monte Carlo simulation here. But Monte Carlo simulation is we simulate the result multiple times, right? We take as input random variables, and then we can calculate, for example, retirement planning. We can calculate, for example, NPV, but then we're introducing risk and uncertainty in our NPV calculation or in our retirement planning calculation. And that can give us a better idea of what is actually happening with our project or our retirement planning. Anyway, the next videos we will be discussing Monte Carlo simulation in more detail, but the important for now is you understand how the rand function, the Randbetween function works, and how we can use the rand and the norm_inv function to draw random numbers from a normal distribution. Thank you very much.